to Grace. My mom's voice rang out over the room, a beaming smile on her face as she lifted her glass. The one who made this magical day happen, I couldn't have done it without you. I froze in my seat, the words slamming into me like a brick wall. Applause erupted around me, the room filled with laughter and cheers as Grace, sitting just a few seats away, gave a modest little smile and nodded graciously. My name is Anna Clark. I'm 30 years old, and up until recently, I thought I had a pretty solid relationship with my mom. We used to be close. Movie nights, long talks over coffee, a real bond. But everything changed when she started dating her now husband, Mark. Slowly, I felt her pulling away, replacing me with Grace, her new stepdaughter, who was younger, prettier, and seemingly flawless in every way. This wedding, her wedding, was supposed to be my way of reconnecting with her, of proving that I still mattered. I'd spent months planning every detail, silently footing the bill for everything from the venue to the flowers, but it was all a secret at her insistence to keep the magic alive. And now here I was, invisible as she gave all the credit to someone who barely lifted a finger. The months leading up to the wedding had been a whirlwind of work, stress, and quiet sacrifices. Mom hadn't been involved in the planning at all. That was her decision. "Anna, I don't want to get wrapped up in the stress of it all," she'd said early on. "You're so much better at this kind of thing. Just surprise me, okay? I know you'll make it perfect." Her trust, though flattering, felt strange. She never asked me about the progress, no questions about the flowers, the venue, or even the dress code. It left me confused. But I told myself she was just excited to enjoy the surprise on her big day. I worked tirelessly, managing every detail from securing the venue to designing the seating chart. I poured my heart into it, convincing myself that this would bring us closer again. What I didn't know, what I only realized too late, was that Grace had been telling Mom a different story behind the scenes. Grace had been claiming credit for the entire wedding planning process. I didn't understand why Mom never brought up the preparations to me, why she never seemed curious or concerned about how things were going. Now, looking back, the pieces fit. Grace had made sure Mom believed she was the one making it all happen. I didn't see it then. Caught up in the work and my hope for the perfect day, I thought Mom's distance was just her way of letting me take the reins. I never imagined it was because she thought someone else was holding. Then I remembered a strange conversation I had overheard a few weeks before the wedding. Mom and Grace were sitting in the living room while I was in the kitchen jotting down notes for the guest list. Their voices carried just loud enough for me to catch snippets. "Oh, Grace, you've been such a lifesaver with all this wedding planning," Mom said, her voice warm and appreciative. "I honestly don't know how I'd have managed without you." Grace laughed lightly, the kind of laugh that grated once you realized how fake it was. "Oh, it's nothing, really," she said. "I just want your day to be perfect. You deserve it." My pen froze mid-note, the words making my stomach twist. What was Mom talking about? Grace hadn't been involved in the wedding at all, at least not that I'd seen. But before I could think too much about it, Mom's voice softened further. "I'm so lucky to have a stepdaughter like you," she said. "You're such a natural at this. I thought that Anna was handling it, but you're probably much better than her at it, of course." My throat tightened as I stood there, the conversation echoing in my mind. I wanted to walk in and ask what they were talking about, but I stopped myself. Maybe Mom was just being polite, or maybe Grace was helping in some small way I wasn't aware of. I told myself it didn't matter, but now, sitting here at the reception, her words made all too much sense. Grace had planted those seeds, and Mom had swallowed the narrative whole. The weeks leading up to the wedding were grueling. Every spare moment was consumed by spreadsheets, emails, and endless phone calls. I worked late into the night most days, juggling my regular job with the ever-growing list of wedding tasks. My desk became a chaotic mess of vendor contracts, swatches of fabric for the table linens, and color-coded seating charts. There was the day the florist called to tell me the flowers Mom wanted weren't in season, and I had to scour local suppliers to find a replacement. Then there was the venue mix-up when the hall booked for the reception accidentally double-scheduled us with a corporate event. I spent hours on the phone, smoothing things over, eventually securing the perfect space. Though it cost more than I'd budgeted, I coordinated the catering, choosing a menu I knew Mom would love, and even paid extra for a tasting session to make sure it was just right. I handpicked the decorations, spent hours folding and tying ribbons for the chairs, and painstakingly designed the invitations myself to save money. All of this was done in secret, just as Mom had asked. I want it to be a surprise, she'd said, but the surprise came at a cost. Late nights, skip meals, and a painful dent in my savings. I had put my whole heart into making it perfect for her, telling myself it was worth it to see her smile on the big day. And now, sitting at the reception, it was clear I'd been invisible the whole time. The sound of a fork tapping against a glass silenced the chatter in the reception hall. I looked up to see Mom standing at the head table, a radiant smile lighting up her face as she held her glass aloft. The room quieted in anticipation. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for being here today, she began, her voice warm and filled with emotion. This day has been a dream come true for me, and I'm so grateful to share it with all of you. Her eyes scanned the room, briefly meeting mine before moving on. Planning a wedding is no small task, and I have to admit I wasn't involved in much of it. But thankfully, I had someone who stepped in and made this day as perfect as it is. My heart swelled for just a moment, foolishly hoping she meant me. Grace, Mom continued, her voice brimming with pride. You've been my rock through this whole process. You've been there every step of the way, making sure every detail was perfect. I couldn't have done this without you. The room erupted into applause, heads turning toward Grace, who gave a bashful smile and waved lightly, like the gracious heroine in some story only she seemed to know. I'm so lucky to have you as my stepdaughter, Mom said, her voice cracking slightly with emotion. You've made this day magical, and I'll never forget everything you've done for me. The applause grew louder, and tears pricked at the corners of my eyes as the weight of her words settled in. Not one mention of me, not even a nod in my direction. I sat frozen in my seat, forcing a smile as my chest tightened painfully. Grace beamed under the attention, her eyes flickering to mine for the briefest moment, a subtle smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. I sat there, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, my heart pounding in my chest as the applause for Grace roared around the room. My cheeks burned and I swallowed hard, willing the tears to stay hidden. This wasn't the time. This wasn't the place. Looking at Mom, glowing with happiness, and Grace soaking up the admiration, I felt a storm of emotions, anger, sadness, and a gnawing sense of betrayal. But I also knew that saying anything now would only make things worse. This was her day, her wedding. No matter how much it hurt, I couldn't bring myself to ruin it. I forced a smile and joined in the polite clapping, though it felt like my hands weighed a ton. I kept my gaze down and my face neutral, determined not to let anyone see how much I was unraveling inside. I told myself I'd deal with it later, process it, confront it if I had to. But not now. Not here. For the rest of the evening, I stayed quiet, blending into the background as much as possible, waiting for the night to, finally, end. A week after the wedding, when Mom returned from her honeymoon, I decided I couldn't hold it in any longer. The betrayal had been simmering in my chest, growing heavier with each passing day. I went over to her house and found her unpacking suitcases in the living room, her face still glowing from the vacation. Mom, I started, my voice sharper than I intended. We need to talk. She looked up, her smile faltering at my tone. What is it, Anna? You don't look happy to see me. I crossed my arms, the words spilling out before I could stop them. What the heck was that at the wedding? I was the one who did everything for you, and you stood up there and gave all the credit to Grace. She didn't do a single thing. Mom's face hardened, the warmth in her eyes vanishing. Anna, she said, her voice icy, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this jealousy of Grace is unbecoming. She worked so hard to make that day special for me. She was the one who actually cared about me. My jaw dropped, my stomach twisting into knots. Jealousy? Mom, I'm not jealous. Grace lied to you. She didn't plan anything. I did. Every flower arrangement, every table, every vendor. I was the one who made it all happen." Mom let out a dismissive laugh, shaking her head. "Stop it, Anna. I asked you to handle the planning, but you clearly didn't care enough to follow through. Grace stepped in because she knew how important this day was to me. She's the one who made it perfect, not you." I stared at her, disbelief flooding through me. "She lied to you, Mom, It didn't do anything. She just took credit for all my work, and you believed her without even asking me about it." She crossed her arms, her expression unyielding. "Grace wouldn't lie to me, Anna. You're just upset because she outshone you. And frankly, that's on you." Her words hit me like a slap, and I felt the tears rising despite my best efforts to stay composed. "You're wrong," I said, my voice trembling. "And one day, you'll see that." But she turned away, dismissing me with a wave of her hand. "I think you should leave, Anna. I won't stand here and listen to you badmouth Grace." I walked out, my chest aching, the door slamming behind me. Her blind loyalty to Grace stung more than anything I could have imagined. She had chosen Grace's lie over my truth, and I didn't know how or if I could ever fix that. The next day, I couldn't let it go. The anger and betrayal bubbling inside me pushed me to do what I'd been avoiding. I went to Grace's apartment. When she opened the door, her face lit up with that saccharine smile she always wore, as if she hadn't turned my life upside down. "Anna," she chirped, leaning casually against the doorframe. "What a surprise! What brings you here?" I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "Sure, come on in," she said with a cheerful tone, stepping aside. I walked past her into the pristine living room, the scent of her overly sweet perfume lingering in the air. I turned to face her, not bothering with pleasantries. "What the heck, Grace? Why did you tell my mom that you planned her wedding?" Her smile didn't falter, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, guilt maybe, or just irritation. "What are you talking about?" she said, feigning confusion. "Don't play dumb," I snapped, my voice rising. "You told her you planned the wedding. You let her believe you. Did everything when it was all me. Do you have any idea how hard I worked? How much I sacrificed to make it perfect?" Grace laughed lightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Anna, I never told her anything like that. She just assumed I was helping. I didn't think it was a big deal, so I didn't correct her." I glared at her, my blood boiling. "Didn't correct her? You sat there at the reception and soaked up all the credit. You let her believe it was you while she completely ignored me." She crossed her arms, her smile turning smug. "Look, it's not my fault she believes in me more than you. Maybe if you'd been a little more open about what you were doing, this wouldn't have happened." Her words hit like a slap, and I took a step closer, my voice trembling with fury. "You're unbelievable. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you didn't care. All you wanted was the spotlight." Grace shrugged, her expression cool and detached. "If it means that much to you, talk to her. It's not my problem if she thinks I'm better at these things than you are." I stared at her, disbelief and disgust flooding through me. "You're pathetic, Grace," I said, my voice low. "And one way or another, the truth is going to come out. Enjoy the spotlight while you can." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. My chest heaved with a mix of anger and resolve. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to make sure everyone knew the truth. Grace wasn't going to get away with this. The day of Grace's birthday arrived, and I sat at home stewing, knowing full well I hadn't been invited. I'd heard from my brother that it was going to be a big celebration. Grace's friends, her boyfriend Liam, and even my mom and the rest of the family would be there. The thought of them all laughing and celebrating while Grace basked in the attention made my blood boil. I stared at the folder on the table in front of me, packed with receipts, email chains, and text messages. Every piece of evidence proving that I'd been the one to plan and pay for Mom's wedding. Grace's lies had stolen my effort, my recognition, and my relationship with Mom, and I'd had enough. I grabbed the folder, threw on a coat, and headed out the door. I didn't know exactly what I was going to say, but I knew I couldn't let this go on any longer. Before I showed up, the room was buzzing with admiration for Grace. Laughter echoed through the space as her friends and family circled her, their voices overlapping with compliments. "You really outdid yourself with that wedding, Grace," one of her friends gushed, holding a glass of champagne. "Everything was so elegant, it looked like something out of a magazine." Another chimed in. "The floral arrangements were breathtaking. You have such an eye for detail." Even Mom couldn't hold back her adoration. "I don't know how you managed it all," she said, beaming at Grace. "You made it perfect, just like I knew you would." Grace basked in the attention, smiling sweetly and nodding modestly, her eyes glinting with satisfaction as she soaked up the praise for work she hadn't done. When I arrived at Grace's apartment, the party was in full swing. Laughter spilled out into the hallway as I stood at the door, taking one last deep breath before knocking. The noise quieted, and a moment later, Grace opened the door. Her smile froze when she saw me. "Anna," she said, her voice tight, "what are you doing here?" "Crashing the party," I said evenly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. The room fell silent as I walked in, all eyes turning toward me. Mom was sitting on the couch, a drink in hand, while Grace's boyfriend, Liam, stood near the cake, looking confused. "Everyone," I began, my voice loud and steady. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something I need to say." Grace closed the door and turned to me, her face pale. "Anna, this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," I cut her off, my gaze sweeping the room. "For weeks now, I've been watching someone else take credit for everything I did to plan my mom's wedding, and I think it's time everyone knows the truth." A murmur went through the crowd as I opened the folder and pulled out the first stack of receipts. "I was the one who booked the venue," I said, holding up the contract with my name on it. I hired the caterers, chose the menu, and paid for every single dish served that night. I moved to the next pile. I picked out the flowers, organized the centerpieces, and coordinated the delivery times. Here's the invoice and the email chain confirming it. My voice grew stronger as I continued laying out the text messages, spreadsheets, and more. Everything, the invitations, the decorations, the seating arrangements, was done by me, not Grace. The room was dead silent now, the weight of my words settling over everyone. Mom's face was frozen in shock, and Grace stood stiffly near the door, her jaw clenched. "Anna," Mom finally said, her voice wavering, "what are you talking about? Grace told me—" "Grace lied," I said, cutting her off as I turned to face Grace. "Go on, Grace. Tell everyone how you let her believe you did all the work. Tell them how you stood there at the reception and took credit for things you had nothing to do with." Grace's lips parted, but no words came out. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her response. "It's not like that," she stammered, her voice shaky. I didn't lie. I didn't correct her because it wasn't a big deal." "Not a big deal?" I said, my voice rising. "You let me work myself to exhaustion while you stood there and soaked up the praise. You didn't care about what that would do to me or to Mom." Liam stepped forward, his face a mixture of confusion and anger. "Grace," he said slowly, "is this true? Did you lie about planning the wedding?" Grace turned to him, eyes wide. "Liam, I don't," he said, holding up a hand. "Just tell me the truth." She looked around the room, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Fine," she said finally, her voice bitter. "Yes, okay. I didn't plan the wedding. Anna did, but it's not like it matters. It was just one day." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Liam's face hardened, and he took a step back from her. "It matters to me," he said coldly. "If you can lie about something like this, what else are you lying about?" He shook his head, his voice filled with disbelief. "I can't do this anymore, Grace. We're done." Grace's mouth fell open, but no words came out. The color drained from her face as she watched Liam grab his coat and leave. I turned to Mom, who was sitting frozen, her eyes glossy with unshed tears. "I tried to tell you," I said softly. "I did everything for you, and you wouldn't even listen to me." "Anna," she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I should have asked. I should have—" "It's too late for that," I said, my tone firm but not unkind. I just needed you to know the truth, and now you do." With that, I gathered my things and walked out, leaving the party in stunned silence. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. A couple of days later, the phone buzzed in my hand, and I glanced at the screen, surprised to see Grace's father's name. Mark wasn't the type to call. He was always quiet, keeping to himself at family gatherings. Hesitating for a moment, I answered. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Anna?" His deep voice came through, slow and deliberate. "It's Mark. I hope I'm not bothering you." "No, it's fine," I replied, unsure of where this was going. "What's on your mind?" There was a pause, the kind that felt heavy with unspoken words. Finally, he sighed. "I just wanted to apologize," he said, his voice thick with shame. "For what happened, Enid. For what Grace did." My chest tightened, but I kept my voice calm. "You don't have to apologize for her, Mark. It wasn't your fault." "I know," he said quickly, "but still, I feel responsible. I raised her better than that, or at least I thought I did." He paused again, struggling to find the right words. "At the party, when I found out what she did, taking credit for all your work, I was ashamed, Anna. Terribly ashamed. You didn't deserve that." I swallowed hard, his sincerity catching me off guard. "Thank you for saying that," I said softly. "It means a lot." "She's paying the price now," Mark continued, his tone somber. "I think she's starting to understand the damage she's done, but that doesn't fix what you went through. If there's anything I can do to make it right, anything at all, just say the word." I exhaled, the weight of his words settling over me. "I appreciate that, Mark," I said after a moment. "I really do. But I think the best thing you can do is talk to Grace. Help her see why this wasn't okay." "I will," he said firmly. "I promise, Anna. And again, I'm sorry for all of it." "Thank you," I said, my voice steady but filled with gratitude. "That means more than you know." In the weeks following Grace's birthday, things shifted. Mom reached out several times, apologized profusely for not believing me and for the way she had dismissed my efforts. Her words were filled with regret, and though I accepted her apology, I made it clear that rebuilding trust would take time. Grace, on the other hand, had become a shadow of her former self. The admiration she had once basked in was gone, replaced by awkward silence and judgmental stares from friends and family who now saw her for who she truly was. Liam never came back, and from what I heard, Grace hadn't taken the breakup well. As for me, I felt lighter. For so long, I had sought validation from people who didn't value me, but now I realized I didn't need their approval to feel worthy. I channeled my energy into myself, picking up hobbies I'd neglected, reconnecting with friends, and setting boundaries that protected my peace. Mom and I eventually began to repair our relationship, but it was different now. I no longer bent over backwards to prove myself, and she seemed to genuinely respect the space I needed. The distance allowed us to rebuild something healthier, something that wasn't built on my sacrifices. As for Grace, she faded from the center of attention, and I couldn't help but feel a little sorry for her, but only a little. Sometimes the truth had a way of setting things right, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally move forward.